Welcome to the Guntersville Grassroots Podcast presented by Frog Talks. Today is May 24th, 2023, and believe it or not, Trey is here.
Yeah, that's right.
Sitting across from me.
Straight, in person, not even on the phone. Showed up on time. That's right. Round of applause. I'm here.
Welcome.
I'm here, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here.
He needs to eat something. He looks like he's kind of wasting away. He showed up with a Bojangles cup, no biscuits. I think he ate the biscuit, but he should have ate 4 or 5 more of them. Boy weighs $110 soaking wet.
That's all right. I've been sweating too much out there on the water. It's getting hot out there.
Yeah. Not enough. It's really still kind of cool. You were out on the lake Monday. What was the water temp?
I didn't even look.
Didn't even look,
to be completely honest. I knew what I was going to do.
It didn't matter.
It didn't matter what it was. It could have been 32, and I was going to look for them out deep on my 10XD. I didn't even care.
All right. Did you catch any on that 10XD?
Yeah, so I actually got out here. I knew them, the MLF guys crushed them. I knew they would, too, because I took a buddy of mine, Mark Schillings, fishes the MPFL. I took him out. It was the Monday or Tuesday before they got here. So I think it was like a week before they got here. And we went out for like 4 or 5 hours in the evening, and we caught like 18 and had 32 pounds.
Oh, wow.
This
was before the pros got here?
Yep. They were just now starting to get out deep good. I mean, they were schooled up, but they were real funky. You know how they get when they first get out there, like you catch 1 or 2 and they kind of scatter around. So like we'd catch 1 or 2 out of one school and move and catch 1 and then move and catch 2. But when we got a bite, it was a big one. Like we caught a 7 and a 6 back-to-back cast, and then we couldn't get another bite.
Here's what was interesting to me, and I watched some of it, and you didn't because I think you were fishing the Wheeler. But like a lot of those guys were rotating through the same half dozen places.
Yeah,
it just all came down to timing. I'm not going to name places, but a lot of them are essentially community holes, and they're dang sure community holes now.
We could post the coordinates to it, and it wouldn't get no worse than it already is. Because I went out there on Sunday with my girlfriend, and when them guys were done,
all right,
and the tournament started at 2 o'clock, 2:30
on a Sunday afternoon.
On a Sunday afternoon, they ended at 4 o'clock that day. Well, I wasn't gonna be that guy. I wasn't gonna go fish on top of them or nothing. So I told her, I said, "Hey, she had never been to the back cave down there and on the lower end." So I said, "We'll just float around, run around till 4 o'clock when they quit, and we'll start." So we didn't get started fishing till they quit. We started about 4:15, 4:30, and when I tell you, there was 2 or 3 boats on every single deep pole that I have ever even thought I had a bite on. We ran from the lower dam all the way up past Seabold and couldn't get on nothing. And you could tell that, they had followed them around. I know why some people get mad when pro trails come to their lake now. I could see why.
Yeah.
Because, dude, there was boats on everything. And then me and G went on Monday to fish the Monday nighter, and it was from 4 to 8 o'clock. And, dude, we ended up having to come all the way up past Waterfront. We put in at All Reds. We never found a place to set the boat down until we got up past Waterfront.
For the record, the Monday nighter's normally the Tuesday nighter, but they had to move it to a Monday nighter that week only. So it's actually on Tuesday night from here.
Tuesday nights from here on out. But, man, it was just insane. We couldn't find nowhere to
on a Monday afternoon.
On a Monday afternoon. And, dude, you could tell, I mean, not trying to be rude or nothing, but you could tell that they had just watched people because they would stay put on one school for like 3 hours, just not move.
And probably not catching.
Probably not catching nothing. They just watch, which is fine or whatever. But I'm like, man, at least go run to the other 4 spots you saw them sit on so somebody else can get in this rotation. But
therein lies my issue with ledge tournaments this time of year. Particularly if you put 200 boats out there.
Yep.
Is if you find a group of fish, you better not leave them.
Yeah,
because you're not going to get on anything else.
No.
I don't mind fishing behind somebody because they prove that, it's just a matter of it's time.
It's timing, yeah.
But, and luck.
Mm-hmm.
But this time of year, if you find a group of fish, you better just sit there and wait. And
wait it out.
It's just no fun to me.
No.
I liked it better when people didn't know how to do it. And it was just a handful of folks that did.
So, I tell you, that's what we run into, fishing at Guntersville. And like I said, they're biting around a little bit. They really were biting the week before they got here, but them guys crushed them, and then all the pressure from the people following them around is really getting to them now. And like, dude, you can pull up on the school and they'll be dotted up everywhere and can't get a bite. You can just tell it's just from pressure. And like, man, they're not out deep good. We'll say that too right here on the podcast in front of everybody. Dude, they are not out deep good. Like, it's the end of May. It's May 24th, and I feel like it's April 24th.
Everything's been running a little behind.
It's like I feel like it's I wouldn't say it's not quite a month behind, but it's a couple weeks behind because dude, them guys were still catching 17, 18 pounds a day on brim beds.
Or better.
Better.
Was it David
Dudley kind of made a run at the thing on brim beds.
He ended up, what, third or fourth?
Yeah. And
fourth, I think.
Yeah. But. And I mean, dude, that when they're out deep good, that don't happen. Like you can't compete on the bank when they're out deep good. But I don't know. Like I said, I think we're a couple weeks behind, and now I think for the pressure they're getting out there now, that the deep fishing won't get good for another. It'll probably be really good in like late June when everybody gets too hot and tired and go home.
Well, somewhere in June they normally kind of start heading back to the grass. I'm not sure that. We got a lot of grass that somehow survived the winter. I mean, other than that 10 days around Christmas when it got stupid cold. It really wasn't that bad.
No.
And I'm not sure that there's going to be not necessarily shallow, but in grass. Grass goes out 10, 12 foot.
I really and truly think by 3 or 4 more years, they won't even get out deep here no more because there'll be so much grass. There's no reason for them to leave. I mean, I think it proves itself. Like even now they get out deep, but dude, I could sit here on a map and mark you on the map on the wall right there. I could mark you every single place they get out deep, and that's about 15 places. And if somebody knows of one of the 15 that I don't, you probably should keep that to yourself because I only know. I mean, I put 800 hours on my Triton out there, and I found about 15 places.
All the obvious stuff,
and everybody knows them. Like it's not, you go somewhere like Pickwick, and man, there's 300 or 400 places they get out deep there. You can find them all over, but like at Guntersville, it's just kind of not laid out that way. There's too much grass for them to hide in and stuff.
It's definitely getting to be less and less with the onset of this eelgrass. I mean, it grows 14 foot deep, which hydrilla always grew that deep. But it's not. It's different. There's something different about it. It spreads them out. Makes the lake better. You get a year where the grass is off a little bit, and people are going to welcome. You could still catch all the fish you want shallow right now too. But today we're going to have Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour professional local guide Ryan Salzman. Ryan was going to come sit down with us today, and we had a little wire crossed on that, and so he said, hey, can we do it on the phone? So we're going to try to get Ryan on the phone and see if he can share a little information. He didn't have the greatest tournament, but as we all know, every day doesn't work the same for everybody on your home pond for sure. But let me see if we can get Ryan. I have got Ryan Salzman on the phone with us. Ryan is a local guide sometimes when he's not traveling. He's a Bass Pro Tour pro, just finished up fishing the tournament on Guntersville. Ryan, glad to have you.
Man, thanks for having me on, Mr. Pat. Good to be here.
Well, Ryan, I was pulling for you real hard last week because I know you, and I'm like, hey, he's a good dude. He knows how to catch him on Guntersville, and he also knows how humbling it can be.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, man. I got that a lot from people, man. We were pulling for you. I was pulling for me too. But sometimes the best I can crack it up to be is it just wasn't meant to be.
Sure.
Hell, my tournament, I was fishing the same places as Jacob Wall, who got second. Heck, a few of the places I showed Jacob.
Sure.
And I mean, I just can't explain it.
All about timing.
And that's not even that, buddy. I mean, I had them hooked. They'd bite it. I wouldn't hook them. Day one, I lost the first 9 fish that bit, so I don't got an answer for you. That just doesn't happen.
That makes some of Trey's sob stories.
Oh, trust me. I've had them days, and you're just like, I just shouldn't even come to blast off. I should have slept in. Like, this is just terrible.
This don't happen very often, let alone in a tournament. I can't even recall that ever having a morning start out like that bad.
Yeah, I've had a bunch of them tournaments, and it's like, man, I can't go practice 6 days in a row and lose 9 fish like that. Like, there's just no, and they'll have a square bill where you can't even see it. That's like Jason Christie losing that 5 or 6 pounder on a frog, and you couldn't even see the frog. Like, that just don't happen.
Right. It's just, man, I call it God and meant to be. Some people call it bad luck, but I know when it's not your time, buddy, it's not your time. It don't matter how bad you want it. God, if God says no, he means no. Right. But on the other side, I've been on the winning side. When God says yes, you cannot mess it up.
Yep.
And Wall was kind of in that path. And you, of course, you were fishing, so you don't know this, but I was watching some of it, and it was, I guess, the last day that you fished, Jacob Wall had already quit fishing. But he was out there, but he was just kind of there, and because he was where he needed to be, and you were in the background quite a bit of ways away, and he's over there going, Ryan, come on, buddy, catch one more right before the clock gets here, because I think you needed like one more to make it to the last day or the next to last day, right?
I needed just a small coal, and this is how the tournament went. I mean, it just wasn't meant to be. I broke off a giant on a hair jig to start the morning.
Oh,
and then right at the end, I lost another one.
So you had bites.
Oh my God. That's what I'm telling. I had all the opportunities. It just wasn't meant to be. Now I did make some silly decisions, leaving some places when I should have stayed. But in the end, if I had the bites and lost them, I still made the right enough decisions to make it to the knockout.
Well, that's what I was fixing to say. I obviously am nowhere near your scale. You know, I fish the opens and stuff, but I just left Wheeler, and that's what I was talking to my Uncle G about. And this is the way I look at it, because you know how it is, man. You have your good ones, you have your bad ones. But the first two events we had, Eufaula, Alabama, and Toledo Bend. And I know you've had yours like this. Dude, I just wasn't around them. Like, I got left off the group email that they were grouped up on ledges at Eufaula in March. I had no idea they'd be like that. Like, everybody else got the email. They misspelled my name in the email, put an A instead of an E, because I didn't get it. So I'm up there swimming a jig looking for spawners, and they ain't there. And then Toledo Bend, just wasn't around them. Now, Wheeler, I finished 55th, and I had the bites, just like you did. You know, you hear fishermen say that all the time. Lose fish, whatever. I'm not crying about it. I'm just saying you can build off of a loss when you have the bites. You can't build not being around them.
Right, but you know, if you're not around them, you honestly learn the most after the tournament, because you're like, man, I totally missed it. But then you learn what you should have been doing, you know.
Yeah, and I think for me mentally too, it's easier though when you know you're around them, right? Like when you're just not around them, you're like, man, that was just bad. And then you know how it is, you'll look back, you're like, man, David Dudley's just tossing a freaking wacky rig around the bank, and I didn't do that. Like, you know how it is, but it's hard, man. Being on your home lake, it's hard. I know it is.
Yeah, it was. You know, I just had the pressure. My family was in town. You know, I expected to do good. Everyone expected me to do good, and sometimes it just doesn't happen like that. To me, it stung more just because I was around them.
Right, you could see them. You knew they were there.
I actually feel better if I'm not on them. I can accept that loss. Like, hey, I missed it. But when you're on, it just, when you had the opportunities and lose them, it stings just a little bit more. And you know, I've done it so long, it's not my hooks. It's nothing other than it wasn't meant to be.
Just meant to be. You've had a pretty good year, hadn't you?
Yeah, I'm sitting 36 in points or 35th in points. I was 32nd in points. I was sitting 26 before this, so I just fell a few places. You know, if you finished the first place outside the cut all year, you'd make Red Crest. So
okay, and that's, I guess, the ultimate goal.
Oh my God, yeah, for sure. Red Crest, heavy hitters. You know, your fish still. If you're just missing cuts by ounces, you're not doing nothing wrong. I mean, you're there, and it's just kind of how the cookie crumbles.
Yeah, I think it boils down to if you're around them and you're missing it by a pound or less than a pound or whatever, it's kind of like you said, when it's meant to be. That's like G always tells me when he won 2 anglers a year, he said, dude, I couldn't have beat them off my hook. They'd have one treble hook in. I could walk around the boat 15 times and let them jump 18 times and they wouldn't come off. He said, but when it's not your year, he said, you can't see the square bill and it'll just come off. Like just
right.
He said, put brand new line on there and break off trying to boat flip a 2-pounder. Like it's just, he said, when it's not your time, it's not your time. And what it is, you can't nothing will go against you when it's your time.
I know. And I've had a mixture of both this season. This season has been, it's just kind of, I've been doing it so long and I've grinded, man. I've been there. I've done it. I mean, this is my 5th year touring pro and it took me 6 years to make it pro. And I've kind of been there and seen it. This is the first year though that I've had kind of an issue with breakoffs for some reason, kind of like you said, but I've had some magical things happen because of breakoffs. So at Lake Murray, man, I started the tournament. I was sight fishing the whole tournament. First tournament I've ever caught all my fish weighed sight fishing. So it was kind of fun. I started on a 4-pounder. Bites right when I get there, lose it. I'm like, oh, that's great. So she swims back, locks on. I'm working for like 20, 30 minutes. Get her to bite a jig, break off. She's jumping around like crazy. I got this on my YouTube. You can go watch it. It's Alabama Bass Guide. So I break it off. And the whole time I'm working this for like 30 minutes, I see this big and just kind of lurking about, 8 feet around the bed and come up every once in a while, but just off in the distance. And as soon as that male got caught and stung and left the bed, she moved up and locked it on it. And then 2 casts later, I catch a 6'11" because I broke one off.
That kind of goes back to the divine intervention thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right. So I've been on both sides of it this year. And then once again, I broke off another one that day. It was a 6'2". Guess how I know it was a 6'2"? Because I came back 15 minutes later and caught it. She bit again. I was like, man, that's just meant to be. I had a great tournament at Murray and missed, but it was once again. So I've had back-to-back tournaments missing the cut by ounces. One was on the final day and one was on the knockout. So I'm just fired up. Like, I'm just like, gosh darn it. Now, I say that I did make the top 10 at heavy hitters. I was comfortably in.
That's right. That's right. I knew there was something that you had done well in. But
yeah, so we've been on a run. I mean, I've been fishing really well. I think Guntersville might have been a situation of wanting it too bad.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to try to force something, and when you think exactly how it's going to go down. You've been here, you've seen it.
And I did know how it was going to go down. But dude, I'm telling you, when I said I was fishing the same place as the Jacob Wall, I was So the place I started at, and if you watched them, I started on that place day one. That's where I lost all the fish. He starts there day 2, catches 18 pounds. I'm like, whatever. That's all I could say. I looked at the score tracker and him sitting over there. I'm like, just shoot me in the face.
Yeah. So you obviously didn't watch it because you were fishing, but dude, y'all, the ones that had kind of figured out the offshore deal, because they weren't everywhere, but the ones that had figured it out, a bunch of you were rotating through the same 6 to 10 places.
It really was only a handful. Like, I think a lot of fish were leaving because there's like another shad spawn starting,
right?
And because my biggest fish came on a swim bait in eelgrass, but the problem was I couldn't run the pattern because all the floating eelgrass.
Gotta love it.
Typical.
Yeah, but I mean, it is what it is, and everyone knows I'm a swim bait guy. That is the way I've won a ton this time of year, is a swim bait over eelgrass. And every one I got bit doing that was a 4-pounder. But the problem was you couldn't keep it in your hand because you're just wasting time because you can't get a clean cast.
Mm-hmm. That's not just a swim bait; it's a true bass swim bait, which happens to be one of my favorites.
Yep, and I caught them. The ones I caught on in the tournament was on a 1/2 ounce and 5.5 citron.
Oh, the old.
I don't know what that citron apparently looks like. I've never seen anything in the water that looks like it, but man, they freaking bite that thing.
They do.
They do. I don't, and like I said, I mean, that's like a buzzbait. I've never seen something swimming on top of the water that looks like a buzzbait, but they like it. That's like that citron, dude. I ain't never, but it's like the only one I throw at Guntersville.
That's a post-spawn come eat me color.
Golly, man, they eat it.
Man, it's a 365 color for me, dude. I don't know, like you said, I don't know what it is about it. And there's a pretty cool story about citron. I mean, I was starting the company, Matt Allen from Tactical Bassin.
Mm-hmm.
I asked Matt and reached out and said, Matt, if you had to make a swim bait color, what would it be? He said, make this color right here. And it was that one that Zoom was making.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, it's just got too much chartreuse. So I kind of made it how I would want it to be, with just that thin line of chartreuse.
Uh-huh.
And that's how Citron was born. This is cool. we got a new color coming out. It's not out yet. I have a few samples. It's going to be called Tron. Tron. Just take the CI off it. But it's going to be like the sister to Citron. We have a color called Pale Chicken. It's like this clear natural shad.
Mm-hmm.
And basically we use the base color for that and put Citron on the back. So it's like a translucent Citron.
That sounds sexy.
Yeah, it does.
It's really good.
Well, that's what my buddy Daniel that won the boat tag with a Bass Cash Bash, he actually caught it on a Citron 4.5. So he caught it on.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did he really?
True bass. It was a 3/4 ounce 5/0 head or 5/0 hook with a Citron swim bait. That's what he caught it on. Won the freaking boat.
What?
That's so cool.
How about that?
Yeah, I don't know. I got tangented off on the swim baits there, but I think fish were leaving a lot of the deep areas and going back to the grass. I've seen it time and time again. Early May or early ledge season during May, if you get several rounds of rain, get a little color in the water, that water cool back off, that shad spawn will start popping off, and those fish will leave several good areas. Like the head of Buck Island. When it started the tournament, loaded with fish, and I should have started there, but I knew I would be sharing it with boats. That's why I didn't go there. But I like the 4 guys that went there all had 20 pounds on day one. So
Lavina, I think, was out there, wasn't
he? Yeah, that was one of the decisions I kind of regretted starting not to go in there. But by the end of day 2, they were all gone, and there was just catfish out there.
I think he caught a great big one on camera. I mean, like big as that table you're sitting at, Trey.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's what.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, I can tell. I mean, I've been on that lake. I know what they look like when I go over them. So, I mean, I knew. I was like, those are catfish. And the guy, my boat official, was like, you sure? I was like, I'm dang 100%. Those are cats. I mean, just left.
You've spent a minute or two out there, so
yeah. On day 2, I tried to fish free as I could, and that's when I'm doing my best, man. I ran up the lake. I hit, every little. I was fishing a lot of hard spots in eelgrass. They were all loaded with them. It was awesome, and but like you said, catch one, then you had to let them rest. But dude, I would catch one, try to let it rest, and guess what? I come back and local would be on it every time. Yeah. But I'm telling you, I got a bad euphemism I'll tell you off the phone, but I couldn't do nothing. I mean, it just wasn't going my way.
Right.
Like, that's all I could say. It was wild. All I could do was laugh about it. I was like, whatever, but I don't quit. I fished all the way to the end. And as you saw both days, like right at the end, I made a little comeback because I had this one school that would be biting right at the end of the day. And that's where I caught that 3 something and another 3 and then lost another one right there, right at the end.
So let me ask you a different question. We normally try to provide a little bit of info for, people listening. Now, hey, you're going fishing. What are you going to do? From a tournament standpoint, there's not a whole lot left this year other than the Big Bass Splash here in a couple weeks. Okay. Now, we all know there's going to be deep fish out there, but we also know that you don't have to go out there in 20 foot of water to catch a big one. And given the pressure, if you were fishing something like that, which is, not obviously you're not, but if you were fishing something like that, trying to catch one 6 to 8 pounder, what would you do?
Man, so True Bass, there are not a lot of stores. True Bass makes a new size. It's just like the 4.5. It's just like the 5.5, the same exact shape, but it's a 6.5.
Mm-hmm.
And we got a 3/4 ounce 7 aught. I'd be fishing those over the eelgrass with that thing. I would lock that thing in my hand and never put it down.
Like the deeper 10, 11 foot eelgrass type stuff on the river?
Shallow stuff too. I'd probably have one on a big 8/0 belly weight hook, and then I'd have one on a jig head. It's funny. So looking back, since talking about the big fish, I've weighted several big fish and won a big bass in a BFL, but every really, really big one I catch this time of year, like through fall, it seems to be in 3 foot or less water.
That's kind of Trey and I were talking about that.
Yeah,
we were only trying to you got to catch one. You're not trying to catch 5. You want to catch one.
Yeah, even if you were trying to catch a bunch, I swear, I think with the pressure and everything nowadays this lake gets, I really think that like 70 to 80% of the fish live in the grass all year.
I couldn't agree more. And that's probably another reason that we see them. So like they come out, y'all were smashing them. And maybe there wasn't a shad spawn, but I did see it. Even if there wasn't, maybe they leave because of the pressure. They're like, oh, not this again,
Yeah.
Well, and with what y'all were doing, you didn't start fishing till 8 o'clock. I mean, there was a couple days it was kind of cloudy, so you might have got a little stretch of shad spawn, but you were fishing the way tail end of it when you were starting.
I know, and I had a couple stretches. I'd get up there in the eelgrass. I'd look forward with my active target, and you would just see the balls of bait all over the grass, and what's going down.
Oh, they're spawning that floating stuff.
Yeah, man. Oh, yeah. But so they actually spawn deeper the warmer it gets. So when it's warmer, they'll spawn when the water's just perfect. The surface level's getting warm enough.
Right.
And that's when you see them spawning on the surface. Now, once that water's like, above optimal range, mid 70s or whatever, they'll actually spawn in the deeper water. They'll be spawning down there in the blades of the grass, not on the surface, right?
Interesting.
Right. So that's what, there was a tournament on Cherokee, same kind of situation. A lot of guys missed the shad spawn. Several people top 10'd it because they saw the shad spawning up against the bluff wall on their active target, but not on the surface.
Well, see, we had an open there at Cherokee last year, the same week that y'all had y'all's, or maybe it was a week before, a week after. It was right around there. And dude, I mean, it was, I've never, like I said, I fished around here most of my life. I just really I fished all 9 for the first year last year. Well, dude, I didn't really even think to look for a shad spawn that time of the year, but just like you said, those LY, ain't that what they call LY? Well, yeah, they were spawning on them. Yeah, they were spawning on them bluffs. And dude, them guys, I mean, everybody had 16 pounds. I had 16 pounds, but I got 5 bites. And I worked my butt off for it. And them guys are out there with a spinnerbait and a swim bait on bluffs catching like 30 or 40 a day. Just like you
Yeah.
said, dude, like live scoping, they could see the shed down there. I'm like, I ain't even look at a bluff. I did not expect that, but that's exactly what they did.
I want to ask you something else that I noticed, and it made me think that I don't hardly do it and not enough of it. But and of course, again, you weren't watching, but dude, almost everybody was throwing a spinning rod with light line. Is that because of the pressure or because the water's gotten so clear? What's your opinion on that?
That's just the pressure. The pressure, and honestly, that's the only thing only thing I could throw with the floating eelgrass. You had to have something that you kind of vertically get down there,
like a drop shot or something.
Yeah, that's where I caught the majority of my deep fish on was a drop shot. I had that one big one break me off in a hair jig. I weighed one on a hair jig, day one, and then had those couple of fours on a swim bait. But the rest of the fish was caught on a drop shot. Just because it was comical. I would like toss it up in the air like you would punch it on a deep mat, and I'd let it go thunk, and punch down through the eelgrass. And I was fighting fish on a drop shot with grass wrapped around all the fish.
That's not fun with what, 8 or 10 pound line?
Honestly, I like it.
You do?
Because what does a fish do once you get a grass wrapped around his head? He just
like a frog fish, just kind of lays up.
Yeah, as long as you're patient, you just troll to him and get him.
Right, that's exactly it. And
except when they come off.
It was funny. It'd be 30, 40 feet out, and you just punch your drop shot through there, and you could just really vertical jig it too. So it was, when you get lemons, you make lemonade.
Sure.
That's right. That's
not what you were expecting to do, but that floating stuff got real special about that week, didn't it?
It really did. And man, that new technique that Jacob's doing with we call it the Asian shape with the straight tail minnow and a jig head. I know all about it. And I had the stuff in my boat. But once you get out there on your home lake, you start doing everything and you forget about anything new.
Yeah.
Literally had a box of those ready to. I was like, I need to try that. And I just stuck my drop shot.
That's right. I got a question for you. We normally talk about it whenever I show up, at least. I don't know. I rarely show up anymore, but we normally talk about it every time I get on here. But we talk about, all you hear people say around here is Guntersville ain't what it used to be. It ain't what it used to be, blah, 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 blah. Well, I got my own opinion on it. I personally think from nowadays with the pressure that this lake gets, I fish it probably more than I should. I'm probably part of the reason the sucker gets a lot of pressure because I work from home and fish about every day. But, dude, with the pressure that this lake gets, I feel like the bags that it's putting out and the numbers of fish and the size of the fish that you catch just regularly where you can go and catch 20 or 30 a day, I think this lake's probably the best I've seen it since I started fishing it, which ain't very long.
Well, you're 12.
Started fishing it like 6 years ago. But what's your opinion? For nowadays, for the pressure that this lake gets, how do you feel about it?
Man, so when I first started guiding, the first 3 years when I came back from deployment, that's when I started doing it full time. So it was 2015 or 2014. We'll just say 2014 through 2017.
Mm-hmm.
It was plumb stupid.
That was when the A-rig was getting hot, wasn't it?
It was A-rig come out 2 years before that.
2 years.
But yeah, I mean, it was hot, but I mean that it wasn't just. It was still catching them, but it was not like it wasn't at first come out. But anyway, you could do anything and catch them. And I mean, I think there was a lot of pressure back then. Not as many people offshore, but I wasn't even catching them offshore guiding. I mean, traps, chatterbaits, swim baits. I mean, and I think it's just the pressure. And the fishing is as good. I'm not going to say there's as many 6 to 9 pounders as
there were
back then, but I think there's as many 3 to 6s as there has been in the past. So it's on the mend. That we had a few years where there just wasn't a ton of big ones. Like for the last 2 years, I hardly caught any over 7.
Mm-hmm.
And this year, I hadn't fished it that much, and we've caught 3 over 7 and 9, and several 6s. So.
See, I agree. I don't think there's as many, in the like 7 to 10 pound range.
It's just an age class thing.
But at the same time, like, dude, the past couple years, I have caught so many 2 to 5 pounders, like it will blow your mind. Like days in the summer and springtime where I catch 80 fish in one day, and the majority of them all be over 3 pounds. Like I think this lake's just chock full of them, and I do think the pressure, like while we're speaking, it's getting beat up right now. I guarantee it. When I drove by All Reds, there was like 30 boats there, and it's always that way. But I think for the pressure this place gets, it still blows my mind. Like last year, I think we had like a 2-week span where we weighed in 30 in the Sunday evening, And then the Sunday morning out of Waterfront took 31. And there was a tournament out of Goose Pond that took 29, and it took like 22 to get a top 20. Like, dude, I mean, the weights that this place still puts out for the amount of pressure it gets blows my mind.
Oh, yeah, undoubtedly one of the best lakes in the country, that it can still do that with all the pressure. And, some people complain about the eelgrass, but that's the only reason we have a bass in this lake.
I agree.
I agree 1,000,000%. It's annoying when it's floating, but, man, it's saved this fishery.
I do miss the hydrilla because you could flip and get to them and do things like that. But yeah, the eelgrass, it spreads them out. It makes places almost, sometimes totally unfishable. Like Ryan just said, he said he had a whole nother pattern of fishing swim baits and he couldn't do it because of the floating stuff. So, but it for sure makes, and it just doesn't go away. Yeah, but
it does if there's current. It moves around. It'll give you windows if there's current. But there's just, TBA's been doing this crazy thing this year where they're just pulling a static 15,000 all day. Instead of just, you might trickle it in the morning, then surge it 30, 40, starting at like 1 o'clock.
Yeah, it's just not a whole lot.
Right. It when you get the current, it sucks it off the main river and allows you to fish. But when you're just doing that trickle stuff, it's just floating in the middle all day long. And it's got all the lakes fishing weird, other than Wheeler. Wheeler's fishing pretty good, but Pickwick's fishing really, really weird as well.
Do you think there's a fish problem over there? There's been a lot of people complaining.
I do. Yeah, I really do think there's something going on at Pickwick. And I think it's just that lake they can't really hide because there's some years it has grass and some years it doesn't. And, man, it's been the worst spring I've ever had over there catching largemouth. Now, smallmouth, it's been good. Like, it's really good smallmouth fishing. But
the springtime tail race stuff and that kind of deal's good, but no heads.
Yeah, I was up there, and I didn't post much while I was up there, but I saw 2 largemouth caught in like 4 days in the Horseshoe. And then downriver, I went during the BFL just fishing, and I stayed everybody's way. We only caught 2 bass all day.
That's crazy.
That's what we had the ABT there the week before the Open at Wheeler, the week before y'all were here. And, dude, the weights in that thing was like terrible. It wasn't. They looked kind of okay, but like, take it from a guy that was fishing, it was terrible. Like, bad. Like, my buddy, we fished out of separate boats on Thursday. He fished all day long, daylight to dark, never caught a bass.
I believe it.
Never caught a bass.
It's like they're in these very, very specific places, and if you're not around them, buddy, you ain't around them.
Yep.
That sucks. So back to what people should do to catch a big one. We're gonna throw a swim bait. We're gonna fish grass.
And fish grass, and obviously you can fish deep. Something that we all got the active targets now. Something I think someone could win doing this. If you just targeted deep, isolated stumps all day and treated them like brush piles, right? Fished a worm in them, a drop shot, just big isolated stumps in the riverbeds. Mm-hmm. A big one. Like if I had all day to go catch a giant, I would probably do that. And then another thing I would do is if that's not really your deal and you don't have electronics, guys, lock a frog in your hand, go from the Goose Pond upriver and just fish all the lily pads and the upcoming grass and even the floating eelgrass in between the docks. A great way just to catch some 5 to 7 pounders and maybe even a giant.
What do you think it'll take to win? June the 8th, 9th, and 10th or something like that?
Mid-June. I'm going to say 8.5.
8.5. Yeah.
I was going to say 9.
You think 9? So
I was going to say high. It's like a 9. I don't know if you get over 9. I'd say right around 8.75.
Right. Depending on how fat that fish is, but it's going to be around that size fish.
Yep. It's funny you say fish those isolated stumps, though. The past 3 opens that I fished have all been one on isolated stumps. Every single one of them on Live Scope.
Really?
Bugs Island, all the way up in Virginia, Wheeler, the flat shatter spawn, and some guys caught them early, but then like when the sun would get up, they'd position on them stumps and pan around out there and just pitch it, isolated stumps. Toledo Bend, which Milliken won on a big glide bait, but like the rest of the top 10 were like all pitching at isolated stumps, which they were spawning, but they were 6 feet off the bank. It would be 6 feet deep pitching at isolated stumps on Live Scope.
Well, just before we started recording, I cracked open Facebook for a second, and the first thing that popped up was a post that Jordan Lee made, and it's been 35 minutes ago, 40 minutes ago that he made it. And it's like, are we at the point to where whoever wins everything is now the best live scope fisherman? He said, I'm not saying this as a complaint, but more of it just kind of seems that way. And it was a little more detailed than that. And I'm sure there's 5,000 comments on it now, but it does kind of seem, I mean, dude, Okeechobee, was it a Bassmaster? Okeechobee got one on live scope on Okeechobee. Who thought that was going to happen?
So, man, I mean, it's true. And it's a symptom with technology on the lakes. And the more you pressure bass, the more you're not going to catch bass traditionally. And you're having to literally, just like you would bed fishing, it's almost like pestering a bass to bite, right? And the only way to do that is with live scope. So, I mean, there's a lot of truth to that. And I've always said, it's like, at what point, I'm not agreeing with Randy Blockett. I'm not going that far, but at what point do we put a governor on a series, you know?
Right. That's exactly my thought. I'm not going to Randy Blockett. I will never agree with that guy. But at the same time, I said at the beginning of the year, I talked to my buddy Sam George, and we were talking about it, and we said it's going to take 3 events this year on the Elite Series or BPT. 3 events that it shouldn't be won with live scope, and they're going to ban it. Or maybe not ban it, but there'll be restrictions. But at the same time, you know, everybody was losing viewers. And like Bassmaster, I said they're either going to ban it.
Now they got it on TV.
But now they got it to where you can see it, which I think helped the viewers a little bit because they can actually see what they're seeing. So you don't see as many bad comments about this is dumb. I'm tired of looking at the back of their head. But like I said the same thing. I was like, it's going to take about 3 tournaments that it shouldn't be won on, which the first one at Okeechobee was. And I was like, it's going to be... I don't know how they would do it. I almost thought it might be something like if you're live scoping, they have to be hooked inside the mouth. But what if you're out there jerking in 10 foot of water on a ball of bait and he gets a jerk bait in the side of his face? He bit it.
It would be really hard to
you can't. You that. Just about. You. I think the way I look at it, I feel like you either have to just free range all in or nothing.
I agree. Now, I don't see a way to regulate it other than you either have it or you don't.
Yeah,
you know?
I don't.
But where's that stop? The 360 is a great tool.
Yeah, but man, look, and Ryan knows this better than any of us. But dude, those companies pour so much money into the fishing industry. You think they're gonna quit? There's no way. There's no way.
Maybe they just make certain events. Have a little, we're going to have a no live scope event. Because in some ways you've lost the art of fishing or changed the art of fishing. Yeah. I mean, Ryan, you've been you've been around long enough. You remember what it was like fishing without all that. There was sometimes you had a little instinct.
I still fish a lot without it because I'm a big instinctual fisherman. And the way I do it now, I kind of blend it with what I do, but I'm not a sole live scope guy. I mean, if I'm having to do that, I'm just not 100% at my greatest. There's guys that are better than me at it. So I know I'm probably good chance I'm not going to win it because it's not my strength.
That's right. But that's how I am. I'm like, hey, if you ban it, I'll be honest with you. You know how many tournaments I've won using it? Zero. So it ain't going to hurt me none. I mean, I can see what I'm looking at, but I'm not like, man, like I give them guys props like Milliken that can get out there with a glide bait in the top of them trees and like, all that like Patrick Walters, all them guys that are just so good. Dude, I can't do it. I've never won a Tuesday nighter with live scope, so I don't really care. It's on my boat, and I use it to help find fish and see stumps.
At least know they're there. Right?
At least know they're there. But dude, I'm not. Even if it's like the best live scoping tournament out there, I can't. That's just not my deal. If I go do that, I'm already beat. I'm like you. I'll mix it in with what I do, but I can't. That's just not me.
Yeah. What you mentioned Jacob Wheeler's, you called it the Asian shake, which that's the first time I've heard that term. He was kind of secretive about his bait because it's one they hadn't released yet. But I mean, it's essentially a little pointy-tailed swim bait.
It's the Sakamata type shad, the depth Sakamata, anything like that. You could use a fluke,
Yeah.
Think of it. It's basically a Damiki rig. It's a power fishing Damiki rig.
So he was shaking his rod and reeling real slow, but he was live scoping most of those, I guess, right?
Yeah, right. But yeah, so they called that. It's not politically correct, but the Asian shake. That's what the guys kind of call it on tour. Alton Jones was doing it. Taney.
Sounds like something you paid for on a Saturday night or somewhere downtown.
Right, yeah.
I didn't get to watch it, but I'm not exactly sure. I was at Wheeler with 1,000 boats on Decatur Flats. But was he doing the same type of thing that what's his name was doing when he won the Classic? Jeff Gustafson.
Yes.
Same thing.
Yeah, well, well, Jeff was drifting it in that current, but I didn't really get to watch that too much because we had a tournament as well. But
I think he was more kind of vertical doing it, and like you said, kind of drifting.
So this is you kind of cast it, and you would retrieve it like you would a swim bait, but you're imparting the action by shaking your rod tip on the fluke.
Yep.
Right. So it's a real subtle shake while you're reeling, and it's just something the fish haven't seen yet.
I was about to say, I think it boils down to exactly what we were talking about. These deep fish out here get more pressure now than they ever do, and I think that's something they ain't never seen. So that's probably why he blew it out of the water.
Oh, he did. He made it look silly.
Yeah.
And now, I'll say this. Jacob Wall, who I've only talked to once or twice ever, but I know he fishes a lot. I know you're buddies with him, Ryan, but like, dude made it look silly the first 2 days. I mean, and he was like, man, this is ridiculous. He quit fishing the stuff he knows. He went to Bridges and caught 4 and 5 pounders. So,
buddy, I'm going to tell you right now. And Jacob's a heck of a fisherman. I've shared the boat with him. He's as good as anybody. And you know when you fish with someone, if they've got it, Jacob's got it. But the thing I know is when it's going your way, just like Trey said and G said, buddy, you can't stop that. That train's going.
Right.
And they're going to bite your hook. You can't take them off it when it's your tournament.
I was hoping he'd win, but, when Wheeler caught 29 pounds that day, I went, ooh, that's going to be a...
Yeah, which I knew Jacob was going to be hard to handle because when Jacob first moved down here, he started fishing in those. He hadn't made it yet. I think he was fishing the Toyota series. I think he hadn't made it to the pro circuit yet. I might be wrong on that. Don't quote me. But he fished some of the evening tournaments, Tuesday nighters and stuff with me, and I met him there. I don't really know him too well, but I met him there, and dude, he was from the moment he got here, like he got it.
Oh, he's a Tennessee River guy.
And dude, we were running. I was running around, and I'm like, man, he's on that. Like, and dude, he caught him. Like it was like I was second. Like most of the time he showed up. Like he got it, and I was like, I knew he knew where it was going to go down. It was just a matter of if it was his time. And the first 2 days, I thought, it might be.
Well, if you had to go, and I think. I don't remember who I talked to last time. I asked somebody, I said, if you had to pick 10 of the 80 that were here, you can't pick 10 because there's probably, there's 20 of them that live here.
Yeah.
And another 20 that know it. I mean, but it's changed a lot. I mean, you look, KVD's won a lot of money on this lake and he struggled.
Yeah.
And I mean, Ryan Salzman, who we're standing here talking to, has guided on this lake for dang near 10 years and knows it very, very well, has won bunches of money on this lake, BFLs and everything from start to finish, but it still kicks your butt every now and then. Like you said, when it's not your day, it's not your day.
At the end, it's fishing.
It's fishing.
That's the thing. There's a lot of uncontrollables, right? So, and it doesn't matter if it's home lake, not home lake. You just got to go out there and fish. And that's why, like, I always pray for God's will every morning, man, because I know at the end of the day, it's God's will. My success is Him. I can't take credit for it. It's all Him.
Yep.
And also my failures,
I was just about to say,
it humbles me. I've never felt failure, and I didn't really fail. I was middle of the pack, but I've never felt failure quite like I did during this tournament, just by not making the knockout round and it going down kind of how it did. So it hurt a little bit, but we're going to bounce back and let's keep going.
Well, one thing I've noticed about you, and you and I talked about this once. I came and got some swim baits from you one day, but like, dude, you're just having fun. You love it.
I do. Yeah, for sure. You mean that last day, I know my boat official just hated me because I was basically a psychopath on a mission to make the knockout round. And we had the craziest rainstorm that I've ever been in on Guntersville. When I say you couldn't see to the end of the boat, you couldn't see to the end of the boat. And guess what? I had to move in the middle of that, and I had to move. Oh. And I was going 69 miles an hour, and that dude got a pressure washing.
I had never heard that. Yeah, that hurt. He probably needed one of those save face things or something.
Dude, he was not happy, and he let me kind of know it. I mean, weighing a few fish. He said, "You let me handle the scale." And I was like, "All right, handle it. Weigh that fish. I got to catch another one."
Oh my! Yeah, and you hate that, but like I said, you were on a mission. You had one goal.
I mean, I had to get through it. I mean, it is once you got through it. And there was one time I've never had this happen. The lightning was striking, and normally I'm pretty reserved. I'm like, I'm going to get out of it. I didn't care. I kept fishing, and one time my hand got zapped on my rod where it was touching the metal on the spinning rod.
They didn't call those old things lightning rods from the Walmart back in the day for no reason.
That's right. Hey, easy on them. That's what I used to fish with all the time.
Yeah. It was a Berkeley rod, wasn't it? Berkeley lightning rod?
Berkeley lightning.
Yeah.
I had 2 close encounters with lightning. I could wait till when we get done talking to Salzman, but golly, dude, I thought I was going to die 2 times the past 2 weeks, and I'm like, if it's ever lightning, I'm out.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. My line started floating.
Until, Trey, and I've always been the same way, and I've had some near-death experiences, until you're a few ounces out of the cut on your home lake in a BPT event, then...
Well, I was about to say, I mean, now,
he'd have been right there
don't get me wrong. Like, if I'm, like, fishing an open, and it's like I was sitting in 11th, and I got 14 pounds, I knew I needed 15 to make it, and I could go to the Classic. Yeah,
right.
I'll probably get zapped. I'll be honest with you.
Dude, I'm not going to lie. I was out there. I said, Lord, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die.
Yeah. Hey, at least you're doing what you love, right?
It's in your hands.
If you're going out, that's a good way to go out. Like, man, that guy didn't quit. He was out there trying to catch one more to make it.
Your boat official would have probably said, take me to shore, but he's back there drowning from the...
No doubt.
That's nuts. Well, Ryan, we could sit here and talk for days. I do really appreciate you taking a few minutes to come on. I'm going to get you in here where we can sit down face to face. You and Trey sitting beside each other would probably turn really comical at some point.
I don't think nobody would listen to it because it'd be like 3 hours long. I could talk all day. You know that. You have he'll be over here telling like, shut up. We're running on time.
I got a special button for Trey over here. You know,
it'll just mute me. Yeah. And then he's got me a mute over there, and he'll just finally just cut it off and be like, all right, guys, and I'll still be over here talking. That's all right, though.
That's all right. Well, he's got a lot saved up because he hadn't been here in a minute. So.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, we'll definitely get in there, and we'll talk some fishing again.
Hey, if somebody wants to get in touch with you to go fishing on a guide trip, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Just get on alabamabassguide.com, send a little submission thing there, or give me a call on my cell phone. But a lot of times I tell them, just if you get my cell phone number, just text me, just because I'm always traveling and this and that, and I may not respond on a voicemail, but text me, and that's probably the best way.
All righty. Ryan, I sure do appreciate you taking a few minutes with us.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man. Have a good one.
You too.
Pretty good stuff there, Trey.
Yeah, it's really good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I hate that we didn't work it out where he could be here with us, but we're gonna make that happen probably next year because we've only got 2 or 3 episodes left before we close it out for the year.
For people listening though, like coming to fish the Big Bass Splash, whatever tournaments you're coming down local, whatever. Every single thing he said about how to catch a big one is true. Like, if I was coming, and I love fishing out deep. That's my favorite thing to do in the world. But if I was fishing the Big Bass Splash, which I can't, unfortunately, but if I was, I would stay in the eelgrass all day long. And I might skip docks, but I'm not going offshore because I think we talked about this before we turned the podcast on, but like, if you're going to get on a deep pole, you have to get there and sit there, because if you leave one, you're not going to get on another one.
Particularly with 1,500 people.
And if you leave that one, you're never going to get back on it. So like, but you can go to the eelgrass, and this lake has so much of it. You can get spread out. Man, you have just as good of an opportunity to catch. Maybe not as quick and as fast, because you get on the deep school, you can catch them real quick. But
a lot of those are going to be 4-pounders, and those things are almost useless in the splash.
Yeah. I mean, you need a 5 or 6 pounder, and I think the best chance to do it is exactly how he said in the eelgrass. And if you don't feel comfortable with a swim bait, like he said, a chatterbait,
big worm,
spinnerbait, big worm,
big old worm,
2.5 square bill, whatever you feel comfortable.
Whatever the conditions dictate, really.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a really good way to catch a big one. He's exactly right.
And apparently, you could throw a dinger on about 8-pound line on a spinning rod and catch all you want, which would scare the ever living crap out of me. But I'm going to try it.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched way too many good fish get caught on a stinking spinning rod. I hate it.
That's right.
I mean, they don't fit my hand very well. It's like a paintbrush. They don't work very well on my hand either.
I feel feminine when I'm holding one.
You probably hold it upside down, don't you, Trey?
I reel it backwards. I'm like, what is this thing? I got like 2 of them. I got 40 rods, and 2 of them are spinning rods. And
I've got 3, but I inherited one of them. I only had 2.
I learned when we went to Oneida last year for the Open, fishing for smallmouth, you got to have one for smallmouth. And I'm like, well, maybe I want to invest in 2. That's max.
Yeah, maybe. But,
maybe.
Wait, before we close.
Okay.
Didn't you throw some rods in the water or something?
Yeah.
Originally? That's a worthy story. I've not gotten any good Trey stories, so we need that. And maybe somebody will make it through 49 minutes of our bar.
Yeah.
Listen to this.
Maybe they won't. I don't know. But yeah, we were at Toledo Bend for the Open. Long story short, it's the first day I was catching them on a spinnerbait on cypress trees. Well, they had started dropping the water, of course. I didn't have much water on them. The water was actually a little high. So anyways, tied on a buzz bait. I hadn't threw it all practice. like first bite of the morning on it, around some cypress knees on the bottom of a cypress tree, like a 3-pounder on a buzzbait. Smokes it. Flip him in the boat. And what I always do, I mean, I've done this for years. It's just what I do. I flip him in the boat. I grab my fish. I unhook my buzzbait. And normally, the way that when I boat flip it, I sit my butt of my rod down behind me and then unhook it so my line's kind of over my head or like on this side. So I lift it. I know y'all can't see my demonstration here, but so I lift my buzzbait over my head and kind of drop my bait in the water so it don't get tangled up my rods. Well, man, when I dropped my buzzbait in the water, of course, I didn't know this at the time. I went back there and put him in a live oil coil tag, turned the live oil on. When I stood back up, couldn't find my buzzbait or my rod or my reel or nothing. So I accused my co-angler of stealing it, and he quickly told me he didn't, but I went and checked his rods. He didn't take it. So I was like, well, my buzzbait's gone. So I looked back at the GoPro footage, and when I dropped my buzzbait over the edge of the boat, it had just enough weight. The butt of my rod was sitting right on the gunnel of the boat. And when it dropped, the buzzbait had just enough weight to where it lifted the butt of the rod up, and it just barely
So what
lifted.
you're saying is those rods don't float?
No. Well, I was so dumb and didn't hear it. I didn't even know. Like, it could have floated for 2 or 3 seconds, 5 seconds, but it took me, probably 2 minutes to turn the live oil on.
You didn't know it was gone.
I didn't even hear it, so I had no idea it was gone because I was so obsessed that it had a whole crawfish in its mouth. So I was trying to show my co-angler what was.
So you have a video on that?
Yeah, I have the video. I posted it on my Facebook, but yeah, it just fell right in. And like I said, I'm sure that the rod and reel probably floated enough time. If I'd have seen it, I could have reached down and grabbed it because I've dropped many of them in the water and reached down and grabbed it. I just never even heard it, never seen it. So by the time I got back up here, it was long gone. I tried to catch it with a crankbait, but there was so much grass growing up, it just sunk down in it and you couldn't.
I lost one netting one time. I was netting my buddy's fish, and I just had found how sometimes you got to find the right use for a rod. You got to, and I had just found the right use for this one, and I laid my rod down, and I went to net his fish, and I had my bait hanging over the edge. Well, I hit the bait, flipped the rod in the water. Of course, somehow by whatever, the bait didn't hang in the net. They normally do. And I watched it sink, but it was a 5-pounder, so I didn't. Oh, there goes a couple $100.
Yeah,
but
exactly. And that was like one of my favorites, a 7.2 medium heavy, that Meta Series rod. Man, I freaking loved that thing. And I got 2 or 3 of them, and one's a swim jig rod. I'm weird about it. If I put braid on a rod, I don't ever put fluorocarbon back on it. Just because I feel like when you slack line like I do and boat flip 4 and 5 pounders on it, it just puts a groove in the eyes. Now, you could get it re-eyed and whatever. I'm too lazy for that. Once it's a braid rod, it's always a braid rod. So I got 1 for braid. I had 2 for fluorocarbon. So now I got 1 for fluorocarbon because I decided to chunk it in Toledo Bend.
I bet somebody will sell you one.
Yeah, I'm sure I know a guy that would sell me one for $149.99.
You mean G ain't gonna give you no discount?
Well, see, what he don't know is I house sit for him, keep the dogs while he's gone sometimes, and he ain't there. So I could just take one.
I wouldn't. We'll
stop. Let's stop there before I get myself in trouble.
We're going to call that a wrap. Thanks for listening. If you made it all the way through this, I did not mean for it to run this long. I had told Trey before it started, if I go over 30 minutes, I'm going to turn it into 2, but it's too late to do that now. It's too late. So we're just going to post it up with a good hour. And if you stuck with it this long, we really appreciate it. If you want to see the tournaments that are coming up, there's not a lot, but the Tuesday nighters have started back at All Reds. You better bring your A game because you got the likes of Trey and Jacob Wall and Gerald Swindle and all those guys show up. The next real deal, here's Big Bass Splash. There's a handful of little tournaments. I think there may be a high school tournament Saturday. Go figure. So till then, enjoy the float grass.